Hello and welcome to the first episode of the first series of Instruo Interviews. I'm Anna Calandra, the presenter and host. Instruo Interviews were born from a desire to help SMEs and decision makers at larger companies with their businesses in every regard, to share our expert advice and the expert advice of our guests. Before I introduce our first guest, I'd like to introduce my co-host and managing director, Furqan Baig.
Thank you. My name is Furqan Baig, as Anna said, and I'm the Managing Director of Instruo. We help businesses with accounting services, consultancy and training services, and we specialize with helping businesses with their accounting and finance function. That's particularly what we do. Looking forward to the rest of today's interview. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Furqan. So with no further ado, it's an honor to introduce speaking skills coach and trainer, Steve Trister. Welcome, Steve.
Thank you very much for having me. How are you both?
Well, thank you.
Doing very well, thanks, Steve. So I guess my first question to you, Steve, would be, who are you?
You're going to start with a small question like that. Who are you? Might as well have asked, why are we here?
We have 24 hours, so feel free to go into as much detail as you.
Okay. All right. So I'll take 20 hours. That's fine. So who am I? Well, like you said, I'm a speaking skills coach trainer. If you want to look at speaking skills as being presentation, public speaking, communication skills, anytime that you or I are the delivery mechanism for the message, the tools apply. I'm a former professional comedy actor of over a decade. And before that, I was at art school as well. So I'm a full-blown creative nutter.
I love that. You should put that as your tagline on LinkedIn.
I can't tell you about it now, but there is something that is boiling underneath some other business stuff, which will include a bit of nutcaseness.
So yes. We'll have to stay tuned to your LinkedIn to see what that includes.
Definitely.
Fantastic. I guess my first follow-up question would be, how did you meet Furqan? Because he's the one that made the connection between the two of us.
Yes, I met Furqan in Edinburgh. That's an awful, sorry, mate. I'm so sorry. For 3 months, it was like January, February and March. And I was doing what I call a big impact training program. And Furqan was there and we chatted, we connected. He's a top boy. I'm really excited that he's gone out on his own and he's in business now. It's brilliant. I love it.
Furqan, actually, what did you think of Steve's presentation and training?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fantastic. And I still apply some of the things that I learned from it today. I still try and be as mindful as I can. I know he talked a lot about self-awareness and also being kind of present in the moment. And when you are communicating, you don't want to think too much about that voice in your head. We'll go on to that a little bit later, I think. But these kind of things, I still apply them today, and they've helped me, and they help me communicate externally with clients. They help me communicate internally with my employees as well. So I'm very mindful of that. And I've said and a couple of times probably in between there, and I've just noticed that I've done that, plus one more there.
You can't whip him over Zoom. That's the difference.
Yeah, I'm actually developing a product in conjunction with Zoom. Not really. That will electrocute people every time they use a filler word, and it's connected to the USB, connected to the chair. I'm thinking that's not real, by the way. It's not a collaboration. I don't think they go for that. That could be a thing, though. Shock therapy.
We're looking for sponsorship on that one. Thank you. Okay. So my next question is, tell us a bit more about your current business.
So currently I work with small business owners, predominantly small business owners. Sometimes I work with corporate senior leaders, but mainly small business owners on increasing their confidence, their impact and their influence every single time they speak. Now that could be using the advent of Zoom like we're on now, with obviously currently what's going on. A lot of people are using Zoom and online platforms. It could be recorded videos. It could be even speaking to their team one-to-one or one-to-many. I've just found that a lot of small business owners, it doesn't come to them naturally to communicate in a way that is really engaging for other human beings. And it's not their fault. They just never had their awareness brought into what it truly takes to engage an audience. And that's an audience of one or many, many people. And that really comes from my acting background. Because, you know, when you're acting and performing, the audience is the most important element. You're delivering a performance to engage them, to shock them, to challenge them, whatever that is. So a lot of my philosophy really comes from what does it truly take to engage an audience? And the small business owners, the ones that apply the tools, they come on leaps and bounds. And the thing is, the tools don't mean anything. They have no value until somebody actually implements them.
How big a difference does it make? For instance, I'm quite an outgoing person, but I suppose like I have a different approach to someone who's a little bit shyer. Given your background in drama and comedy, how would you approach those different clients?
Some of the more shy ones, it takes a little bit of time to get them warmed up. And there's not really a huge difference in approach I would take with them. For me, it's all about rapport and how quickly can I build up genuine, authentic rapport with my client. And what I've seen in the presence of really good rapport, really amazing rapport, people aren't so shy anymore. You know, when you create that space for someone to feel safe, to feel comfortable, and to give something a go. And I always have a laugh with it. That's naturally who I am with a comedy background. I like to make it fun so it doesn't get too serious. Sometimes we have to talk about some serious things, but then it's about implementing the tools, getting them out of their head, not attaching so much emotion to what's going on, and just giving stuff a go and playing with it. And then I find that some people who are naturally shy, and weirdly, I am a bit of an introvert. I don't like being around huge amounts of people. In fact, I can't bloody stand it. But it's certainly a part of me that has that expressive side. So when it comes to some shy people, it's about how do you make things comfortable so they're willing to take the shackles off of how they naturally are to just explore their, I suppose, expression tool belt or what's possible for them. And then with regard to people who are more outgoing, sometimes you have to rein them in a bit, or obviously it's a bit easier, but the most important thing is the rapport, because in great rapport, absolutely anything is possible.
I can vouch for the needing to rein it in a bit, as illustrated with the question I asked that you answered so articulately. Thank you.
Okay.
My next question is, you created the concept of, I'm probably going to say this wrong, but vomiticus contentinatum.
Pretty much on point. Vomiticus contentinatum. Yeah, it's pretty much what you said. Yes. And it was back in 2007, really, when I fell into the business world, because before that, I was doing really what I considered shitty jobs in between acting roles. And a lot of times it was my own work that I was creating, and I didn't really do the whole audition thing. I love creating stuff because, like I said, I'm a creative nutter. And then in 2007, I fell into business networking, and I joined an online website called academy.com, and their highest level, Black Star level, because it was more intimate. You get to know people. I didn't have a bloody business at the time. I just did it because I wanted to do something when I wasn't acting that was more productive. I thought I'd surround myself with business people. I love people and getting to know them and, building relationships, but I didn't have a business. And after going to a number of these networking events, so there was online and offline, not just with Black Star, they had bigger events. I'm talking to people and I'm losing the will to live. Like, I'm thinking, you are in business for yourself. You're representing a business and you have no awareness about what it takes to engage another human being. And after about 6, 7 or 8 events, I went back to one of the Black Star events. I think there's about 40, 50 people there. And I spoke to a couple of people that I got quite friendly with. And I said, look, I'm thinking about doing this kind of coaching. I'd kind of be like a director. I'd love to gift you a free hour and let's see how it goes. And the idea would be to take you where you are and improve like the impact you make when you speak. Would you be up for it? And both of them did. And the result was ridiculous from where they were to where they ended up in an hour. And I filmed them, we watched it back, did that process. And I was like, wow, this is interesting. I found it really easy to do. And I said to them, I said, what would you pay for that session? And they said, 100, 150 quid. I nearly fainted. I'm sure my jaw hit the floor because previously, for maybe 3 or 4 months, I was selling advertising space that went on the front of a CD, on the front of a wedding magazine for 250 quid a week, slogging my guts out for a product that was absolute cack. And they said 100, 150 pounds. And that is when I knew that I had a business there, or an opportunity to create a business as well. And then it went from strength to strength.
Amazing.
I think you made a great point there about business people not being able to engage with the person, or not having the skills essentially to engage with people. And I think that's something that we forget as well as business owners, especially when we use all this terminology like B2B, for example, where it takes that personability out of it. You're getting in touch with a business, but at the end of the day, we forget that the business that we're getting in touch with consists of people,
Yeah, P2P.
To have to be able to engage with those people at a deeper level to, as you said, develop that rapport, which is the most important thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, it should be P2P, not B2B.
Mm-hmm.
It's a funny one. I've always, when I've built business relationships, a lot of time that's been on a social scale as well, and getting to know them at either events or out socially, wherever that is. And it's never really worked for me building the deeper relationships, the relationships that last a long time, even the profitable relationships as well, when it's just been straight up business to business. Yeah, of course, there's been some times where that's happened when someone has an immediate need and there's been a referral, but I've always found it much more advantageous and rewarding to build like proper relationships with people.
Furqan and I were talking recently about the WeGo. He came across something that I think you might have posted on LinkedIn or your website. Furqan, did you have a question about that?
That's exactly what I was going to ask about, is that you've talked a lot about that. You've spoken to me individually about that as well. And what is that? I mean, if we could explain that a bit to our audience.
Well, before we talk about the WeGo, we need to take a step back and talk about the ego.
Okay.
So the ego, let's look at the ego as the unsupportive voice in our head. And a lot of us have it a lot of the time, and to varying degrees, we listen to it or not. But one of the things that I do know, having done this coaching at the time of shooting this interview podcast with you, for the last 13 years, I've seen so many small business owners have it because they're human. And it's the unsupportive voice that tells us things like, you're not good enough, you look fat, you don't sound good, blah, 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 blah. And we all have it in different areas of our life, right? I have it in areas of my life. I'm just very aware of it, going, oh, hold on a minute. There's the ego, the unsupportive voice. And the thing is, a lot of time, that's not the truth of who you and I am. And yet so many people believe it is. They let that voice run them. They let it govern them. When it comes to public speaking, virtual speaking, recording video, that kind of stuff, it comes up very strong for a lot of people. Because I think public speaking is supposedly one of the top things people are afraid of. It's even more afraid of than dying. I mean, it's crazy. And that unsupportive voice is not the truth of who you and I am. So what we have to do is, when that pops up, is first of all, have the awareness of our thoughts, because a lot of people don't. They're just unconscious and going through life. They believe what it says and they let it govern everything. That's very unhealthy. The minute we have the awareness of what it's saying, there's two questions that I recommend people ask. The first one is, when it pops up, for example, let's take, I'm not good enough. The voice says, I'm not good enough, or you're not good enough. And then you want to go, is that true? You gotta have the awareness just to take a pause and go, hold on, I'm not good enough. Is that true? And the ego, the unsupportive voice, will come back straight away and go, yeah, you're not good enough. Now, some people might go, no, you are right. I'm not good enough. But the key is, just hold your ground and then ask this question. Where's the evidence? Come back to that voice and go, where's the evidence then? And the voice goes, evidence? The evidence. It's a good question. Where's the evidence? The majority of the time, there won't be any evidence. It would just be a habitual way that you've been thinking, that you've been believing. So it keeps coming back and back again. Now, there may on the odd occasion be an example. It comes back and goes, yeah, when you were 7 years old in English class, you stood up to read a poem and everyone laughed at you. That's why you're not good enough. And you go, 7 years old. And But a lot of times people will have an experience like that when they're younger in their childhood, and then let that determine how they behave literally for the rest of their life in many different areas through those traumatic experiences. A part of the human condition, we have a traumatic experience. Sometimes we shut down. We think, I'm never doing that again. And actually we don't question it as we get older. Is that actually holding me back in some way? And a lot of times when you have these scenarios, when it comes to public or virtual speaking, it does hold people back. And then you realize, the person would realize, hold on, I'm 35, 40, 45 years old. That was way back then. That's not who I am now or where I am now. But that's the power of the mind, right? That it can condition us if we let it to keep doing this unsupportive behavior for our entire life. So the we go is where we're not caught in our head. The we go is where you go out of your head into the present moment, because you can't be caught in your head listening to that voice and be in the present moment and connecting with your audience. So the reason I say chuck the ego away, I'll tell it to be quiet. Thanks very much. I don't need you today. Or you can tell it, you can be a bit more ruder if you want. And then you focus on the we go, and you break we go down. Is we go together. We go. It's that conversation. It's that connection piece. It's about, feeling the right emotions when you're talking, creating the world, being present and in the moment for your audience. And I promise you this, when you are in the we go, it's literally impossible to be in the ego at the same time. There are two completely different ways of being. The we go is where the magic happens. The we go is actually way easier than the ego. And your audience 100% knows which one you're in. They might not know that it's called the we go, like we're talking about, but they will feel the difference instantly.
Seems to be like a great solution to something that I struggle with, and I know a lot of people struggle with. Imposter syndrome. Am I getting the right gist there? Because it's kind of a buzzword at the moment, and I feel like what you describe as the ego is very much that element of, I don't really deserve to be where I am, but mostly I don't deserve to progress. So it's fantastic that you found, even just that you found the words for a solution to that, because I know a lot of us are struggling, especially right now, times being very difficult, and not being able to see a way forward for ourselves, or not feeling like we deserve that way forward.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
That's great.
Yeah, and it is a very interesting time right now as well. And the imposter syndrome blatantly comes from the ego and the unsupported voice. You're not good enough. Why should people listen to you? All of that stuff. And what I find interesting is that when I start to look outside and watch the news and all that kind of stuff, I don't hardly watch it at all. But if I do watch some of that stuff where there's trauma, there's negativity and that kind of stuff, I can find that that egoic voice is louder than when I don't watch that. Then I don't listen, rather than fill myself up with stuff that I know that's good for me, whether that's podcasts or meditation or whatever it is. It's really interesting that when I do the stuff that supports me, my ego, unsupported voice, is way quieter, sometimes non-existent. Whereas if I watch stuff that, if I'm watching the news about COVID or whatever that is, it can be much louder. And it's a really interesting self-awareness and a battle at times to go, hold on a minute, actually, this isn't actually real. That's not the truth of who I am. And that's what I have to tell myself if that comes up for me. It doesn't have to be that way. And it all starts with self-awareness, being aware of when these thoughts come in, being aware of what situations trigger certain things within us. Because obviously someone goes to stand up in front of an audience and they start getting nervous and shaking. If they don't know why, then they can't change it. That's why a lot of times, sometimes I have to have some pretty intense conversations with my clients and hold a safe space where I go, okay, let's just delve a little bit deeper if you want. Or they'll give me a chink of something that they said. And I said, hold on a minute, can we just go there a bit? And then all of a sudden, sometimes the floodgates open. Sometimes they have this release and you're like, that's where it came from. And they're like, I didn't even realize. And a lot of times the things that are holding them back aren't the things that are holding them back.
We talked about this as well, that people attach stories to what they do and what they've, what their experience has been throughout life. And attaching those stories is what ends up limiting them from even achieving what they can achieve, what they have clearly, as you described, the potential to achieve, but they've been holding themselves back, ironically.
Yeah, and a lot of times it's unintentional. But, a belief is only a thought you keep thinking. And a lot of times we keep thinking these thoughts over and over again. hours, days, weeks, months, years, and that becomes absolute truth for us. Unless we have the flexibility and awareness and desire to see what else is out there and to see other possibilities. Some people are, some people aren't. And the ones that aren't, I don't work with.
That's great. I have a question. It's something that we mentioned on a previous call, something that you think you could maybe improve at. Do you remember what we were talking about?
I don't remember what that was. And was it memory?
I would be so impressed if you fully remembered. It's kind of testing you there.
I don't. I have something in my head. It might be a different one, so I'll add that. So what was it that we all spoke about?
I was going to say that we were talking about something you could improve at, and that is announcing your wins. Actually, both of you mentioned that you struggled to, celebrate openly when you've made an achievement. Do you want to talk a bit more about that, Steve?
Yeah, that's something I feel like throughout a lot of my life, I've been reserved that or resistant to sharing, because when I think about it, a lot of the times in my life I've put other people before me, because I was quite shy when I was younger, and as I've grown up, there's part of me that's extrovert for sure, but it's that thing about maybe my ego's like, no, don't share that, because people who think you're showing off or you're overconfident or whatever, that kind of thing. I've got a bit better at it as the years have gone on. And, when all the COVID thing was happening, a lot of people losing their jobs. And, it's still a bit touchy for some people. I'm seeing on LinkedIn, some people sharing wins and that kind of stuff. And I really like seeing some wins if it's done in the right way, because it gives hope and that. And some people are like, you shouldn't be talking about that. People are suffering. And I'm like, okay, we can't just keep going on this suffering vibe the whole bloody time, because, we're going to keep suffering forever? But it's just a case of, yes, I absolutely could share more for sure. And I feel like this is a bit more of a nudge, this conversation, because it brings more awareness into that. And it's really not something I think about consciously a lot, that I don't really share many wins. I suppose if I am to think about that, one of the first things that comes up is, why are you sharing that? You don't need to, you think you're Jimmy Big Bollocks or whatever, it's kind of like, you don't, why do you need to do that? But what I would say is, I would also check in with myself if I was to share a win and go, am I doing this from an ego point of view because I want validation? Or am I doing this with a different intention to highlight a certain issue? Can somebody learn from this? Because if it's purely from an ego point of view and I want a pat on the back, that doesn't do anything for me. If it's a client that has had a massive transformation, that's a cool thing for me. That brings me a lot of joy, and I feel like that could help somebody else know that that's possible for them. Okay, now I'm talking to you, I'm kind of going, okay, I'm getting more clarity. It depends what the win is. My wife and I literally, after lockdown, we moved into our dream home. But it's rented, but it's our dream home. And that's the thing. We've got flexibility if we need to move in a few years' time and that kind of. But straight after the first lockdown finished, when chaos is kicking off, people are suffering, and we're like, we can't say anything. We didn't want to, because we were being a bit sensitive. And actually, is it something that we needed to share? We didn't need to share. We just knew for us. So it's like, I think there's timing. I think it's about what you're sharing. Question why you're sharing it, because I know a lot of people share it to inflate their ego because they want validation, and I've done stuff like that in the past for sure. But now, as I grow and I become more self-aware, is the intention behind it.
I'd say that's absolutely fair. Furqan, did you have anything that you wanted to add? I know that's something that you mentioned you struggled with before, and if you're still struggling with it, how do you plan on changing it?
That's a good question. Filler word. I think that like Steve said, I need to become a bit more self-aware of, what I'm sharing. My intention to work with a business or to share something, a win of mine, has to be of some value to the other person that's listening, rather than just for me to kind of, just say that, like Steve said, for validation or for increasing my own ego. And like you said, I've done that in the past as well. And I was going to say to Steve that, Steve, you mentioned a personal win, but on a business level, what kind of wins, would you feel? And I'm asking because this is not just giving value to yourself by sharing it with us.
Yeah.
This is what I feel is giving value to me so that I can understand the level that you've worked at with different types of people.
Yeah, well, I'll share two wins we did that jump to mind. So the first one was when I worked with a very senior corporate leader that was chief marketing officer of a $50 billion+ global corporate. And I got her ready, and I did this 2 years in a row. I was flown out to Vegas, and I got her ready to open a massive, massive conference where there was 9,000 people live in the audience and nearly 100,000 people online.
Wow.
So it wasn't just the opening, it was a few other little speaking gigs throughout the 3 or 4 days that we were there. And funny enough, this lady she's originally from England. And I'm not allowed to say who she is, unfortunately. But it was a really amazing process. Great to work with a senior leader that is hungry to become better. And that's what a lot of the senior leaders that I've worked with have been like that as well. Desire to be the best, desire to get better, desire to serve the audience in the right way. So that for me was a fantastic opportunity as well. And I ended up working over a period of about 3 or 4 years, a number of very senior leaders in that organization, and actually help some of the others to do the same thing that she did in Europe as well, when they had big events in Europe. So as a fantastic opportunity. And then, I've worked with a number of accountants, and you know this, and I still do today. One specifically, and I'm very happy to name his name because he's done a fantastic, a really beautiful video testimonial for me, a guy called Mark Wickersham. And we were actually on a mentoring program together. So we knew about each other for a long time. We'd see each other once a month. And then when we finished that, I ended up working with him. I did 2 very intense, maybe 3-4 months worth of training with him. I went to his place and we did some very intensive face-to-face stuff. And he was boring on camera to start with. You won't mind me saying that. It wasn't very engaging. And yeah, so I put him through his paces. But the really key thing with Mark is he was so open to the feedback, so open to diving in and giving the tools a go, that he got so much out of it. And after we finished working together, his confidence increased, his skill level just skyrocketed. He really enjoyed being in front of the camera. And not long after we finished working together, he started getting these gigs, like global speaking gigs, like for massive events from leaders in the industry, like huge companies. And, before lockdown, he was a global professional speaker, getting paid handsomely for speaking in front of audiences. And it just, I know for a fact, he said, I played a massive hand in that with the coaching that we did. And now he does lots of online trainings. The guy is a machine when it comes to producing video content, and it's way more engaging than it was now. So that's just like literally an accountant at the time, who wanted to be better on camera.
I'm very glad that you worked with Furqan before I met him, because I don't know what he was like before, but he was very engaging when we spoke for the first time, hence why we're working together now.
The thing is with Furqan, he has natural charisma anyway. That's why we stayed in touch. And I might have stayed in touch with one other person from that training, but he's naturally very charismatic. You can tell he's a people person, and he definitely didn't come across to me as a typical accountant, for sure.
If you look closely, you can see his head inflating.
Well, I was just about to say that, at least I didn't have to say it. It's coming from Steve, so that means a lot.
No, but the thing is, we naturally clicked, didn't we? And a lot of the breaks we were talking, I really liked him. I see, the thing with Furqan, I can tell that some people, they have the same values. They care, they're kind, and I gravitate to that, and intuitively, I pick up on that very, very quickly.
Oh, that's wonderful to hear. I'm conscious of time. Sadly, I think we have to wrap up, but what's one final tip that you have for SME owners who want to be better understood?
This is a good question. Really good question. To be better understood. Okay, so it's this one. And this is so important. To be better understood, they need to be better felt. Now, let me share what I mean by that. Is that it's all well and good sharing your message, but if you have no emotion behind it, no emotional connection, people will just feel numb. So to be better understood, they have to feel and connect emotionally with what they say, so that the other human being they're talking to, that other human being, not business owner, not this, not potential client, human being, they need to feel it too. And the minute that they connect emotionally, and it's a concept called honoring the words, like you actually feel the right energy, the right emotion for the words that you're saying, the other person has a much better chance of feeling that too. And if you can create emotion and conjure up emotion in another human being, you will be way better understood than if you don't. So it's all about how willing people are to really feel what they say, feel that conviction, feel that the right energy, the right emotion. And a lot of people they're in business, so you don't bring emotion to it, don't feel it. The thing is, you're never going to get that right reaction or connection with an audience unless you actually connect emotionally with your own message. Because if you do, you've got a much better chance of the rapport building, taking them on the journey, influence, persuading, and connecting. Whereas if you don't, you're going to end up with vomiticus contentinatum and leaving them feeling numb, unconnected, and wanting to go to sleep.
Ideal, and the perfect way to wrap up. And speaking of connecting, Steve, if someone wants to connect with you, how do they do that?
Telepathy.
Pigeon.
I'm on LinkedIn, so just type in Steve Trister. Also, my website is stevetrister.com. You can go on that as well.
Fantastic. We'll find you on LinkedIn. Please do tune in to the next episode of Instruo Interviews. Thank you so much for Furqan and I'm rambling. So clearly I've learned nothing, but thank you so much, Steve Trister.
I enjoyed that. Hopefully that added value. It's going to add value to your audience and you guys enjoyed it too. And I really appreciate, and I'm honored to be your first interview.
It's been absolutely fantastic. Don't forget to follow us on our social media channels.